misappropriate, which is, he said it's kind of like advertising in a newspaper that you want to hire a lifeguard. And then in really small print it says, by the way, you can't go in the pool though. Who's going to be a lifeguard if you can't go in the pool? Right? And that's really what dual class stock is about. You're hiring and bringing on board members, but you're telling them, by the way, you can't sort of go, because it's my company and you can't ever fire me and basically I don't have to listen to you. So there's an old phrase, kind of coding phrase of garbage in, garbage out. And that's, I would submit, you got to be really careful with dual class companies about what you wish for. Because, again, the guys who manage trillions of dollars, they're not wrong. So, final thought here, two final thoughts. One is, why and how the boards matter not only in the operating of your business, but when it comes to any kind of exit scenario. I'm going to be a little more frank than the people who were on before in saying that it's not because venture guys are bad people in any way, shape, or form, but they have lots of reasons why they may want an exit at point A versus point B. Okay, I'm dealing with a situation right now where a company is being quasi-forced by a preferred A round person into an exit, and it took a lot of digging to try and figure out that fund is not doing terribly well and is looking to raise more money, and they need to have some exit in the prior fund. So basically it's, sorry, you're in. And that's kind of a more sinister kind of application of conflict of interest, but there's all kind of more basic conflict of interest, right? I'm in at $1. Somebody wants to hit the bid at $11. That looks pretty good to me. Not so much for the guys who get 12. Right? So how do you deal with those conflicts of interest? One of the ways is just to be brutally frank about their existing. The other way is to bring on independent board members who not only can help you with strategic imperatives, can help you with understanding risk, can help you with your target customers, but can also be kind of a buffer and a voice of reason in making sure that venture investors do what the person who is sitting here frankly never do. Okay? And I'm not, if he was here, I would just differ with him intellectually and say that venture people, in my experience, talk a great game about making sure that we govern for all shareholders. Come on. They're governing for their fund. All right? And let's just, and by the way, I'm a former institutional investor. Okay? I get it. But they're governing for their fund. They're not governing for Mary and Johnny in Naperville, Illinois, who wants some shares on second market. They don't care about that. Okay? Why would they? They're incented. They make a lot of money for their fund. And I think it's smart for everybody to just realize that and just accept the fact that that's what you're up against. Okay? They're not governing for all shareholders. They're governing for themselves. Okay? Then you're not going to be surprised by what happens. But if you bring in independent board members as kind of a buffer, you get someone else to be able to say, hey, I have a question. Like 6 other companies just got bought for a valuation that seems like it's a lot higher. Seems like we could probably get close to that. Why are we all hitting the bid today? I see those conversations on a weekly basis in the Valley, and when there's no independent board members, really hard. So with that, happy to take some questions. Yeah.
Am I right that Facebook is dual class shareholder?
Yes.
Okay.
Not kind of a different variety. I'm not an expert on Facebook, but I think the short answer is yes. I don't know how the share works, but I think I'm right in saying that I don't know that it's possible for the company to get rid of Mark if he doesn't want to.
So my question is, do you have thoughts on the recent privacy, whatever that happened and the composition of their board?
Sure. Well, look, you have a very similar issue there. People were going on and on about, you need to put all these other board members on. Well, that's great. Except that in this case, it is the guy, the whole other issue. It's almost always guys. That's part of the problem. Is he kind of doesn't have to listen. So you can bring on as many people as you want in a dual class company, but if the guy who's running the show doesn't have to listen, kind of tilting your windows. So, I know there's purists out there, there's academics, all kind of others who are whining, complaining about changing the board composition, separating out chairman, all these things. My question is, if you have supreme voting rights and you can't be replaced, then what's different? So there's a realistic aspect, and then there's kind of the purist take on it, right? And my understanding, and by the way, again, just a caveat, I'm not an expert on Facebook, but my understanding is you can't fire the guy. And if you can't fire the guy, then a central tenet of boards is off the table. Yeah.
No questions.
Yeah. So
go ahead.
Yeah. So we're a small company, right?
Yep.
So the people that we really respect, understand our business, is probably someone that's done that, has how to scale. However, there could be they could also be a threat to our business too. So how do you balance that? How do you,
You mean having a board member that's too close to the business you're doing?
right. For example, let's say we're selling a drink, and of course we'd love to have Coke on board, right? But they could crush us in a second.
So how do you pick somebody with enough experience that doesn't compete with you?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's always a risk in the early stage environment to balance, and companies are doing that every day, right? Trying to get someone who's skilled enough so that they can help with some of the imperatives, some of the risks, some of the target customers, but not have someone that, for example, by the way, it doesn't have to be a corporate. It could be a fund that has a portfolio company that's competitor of yours, right? And you're going to assume that those people are not going to share information, which is a bad assumption, by the way. So it's really challenging, and I think those are all come down. There's nothing magic about boards per se. It really comes down to what kind of risk do you feel like taking, and what's the risk, kind of the risk-adjusted return of having someone on your board who might have an element of danger to the company. They may be a risk in and of themselves. What's the trade-off? And so I think people walk that line all the time, especially in the Valley, by the way, where so many people know each other, so many people are on other boards, right? And it's
there's like part of it is kind of obvious conflict of interest, and that there's maybe a non-obvious one that they're supposed to disclose.
Yeah, exactly.
Question. So here. So starting here. Yeah, you.
You started and acted investing as a prime example of the presentation. And so one thing that I would ask is, can you really count on the board of the active investor being truly independent if they are brought on by that investor to toe a certain line, to toe a certain strategy?
Sure.
A board brought in by an activist investor.
Yeah, it's a board brought in by activists, or they really independent. So there's independence, kind of a loaded word, right? The New York Stock Exchange and NASDAQ have their own requirements for being independent board member, which they all reach. So it's a very low threshold, right? For example, you can be the best friend of a CEO and be put on the board and still meet or exceed the independent requirement. The question is whether they're going to be objective, really, right? And are they really looking out for all shareholders? On a case-by-case basis, you have to figure out, for example, what we used to look at was, are the people who are on that slate, are they people that have been on slates? And slate, by the way, is a term that activist investors use when they propose our 4 board members, for example. They refer to that term as our slate of board members. You look and see whether people have been on on that particular investor slate. If they've been on numerous times, they clearly have some type of allegiance. One thing where I thought your question might be going is that's changed, is that for a period of time, 3 or 4 years ago, investors used to actually compensate the board members that they put on above and beyond what the companies were paying. And people then realized, hey, you know what, that's fraught with all kind of issues, and that seems like that's kind of disappeared now. But remember, in fairness to somebody like Starboard, right? They buy 5%, 6%, 8%. They buy pretty substantive positions in a company. And so what's good for the goose is good for the gander, right? The real problem with activists, I'll just conclude by saying that you really have to look at what their playbook is. I mean, most people assume that because I talk a lot about governance and support an institutional investor, I think that activist investors are great. I don't think that activist investors are great. There's, like most things in life, there's like 10 or 20% of them that are really long-term biased, have terrific operating people they bring on companies, and you should almost be happy that they showed up. And 80% are varying degrees, and I'll just be frank, of reckless imbeciles that are really focused on, hey, how can we trade this stock literally in a month from now? So a lot of it comes down to track record, right? Never believe what any investors say to you, whether it's venture people or whether it's, what venture people say or what capital market people say. Just look at the track record, right? Just look at the track record. Don't believe anybody's slide decks and hyperbole.
One more question here, yeah?
Yep.
So I'm a very startup CEO. So we are, under $1 million revenue, and here this talk is pretty prepare myself for the future. But so right now, if your company are lower than $5 million revenue and increase profit like $5-10 million, so those rule actually really apply because what I see is the traction, chain momentum seems way more important in a board who supervises, maybe even slow down doubt about your expectation may help your strategies?
Yeah, so great question. The point is, how does this apply to companies that, are kind of below 543, $1 million run rate, kind of pretty nascent businesses? How many of you know Brad Felt? You know that name? Yeah, Brad to me is the person who writes and speaks the most poignantly and articulately about a lot of things having to do with early stage companies. And I'll just steal what he said in a great book that he wrote called Startup Wars, which is, unless certainly when you take your first outside capital, that is a point where it really makes sense to begin to have a board and kind of, if you will, dress for the job that you want versus the one that you have. Before that, when it's a really nascent situation, you haven't taken any outside capital, it is kind of form over substance, right? I mean, the same 2 or 3 people are going to sit in a room and decide and take minutes and all that doesn't make any sense, right? But what I agree with Brad that certainly when you take your first outside capital, that's when it begins to make sense to train yourself that, hey, every quarter we're going to do a couple of things. We're going to think about what our strategy has been, where we are. We're going to look at whether the landscape has changed, whether our strategy needs to change. It's a good idea to be able to have to defend that to other people. It's a good idea to have to think, hey, you know what about the risks that we're facing? If those change, right? And have a moment where, and frankly, one thing I encourage really early stage companies to do in order to make sure you're thinking about it differently is get out of your office. Make it so it's a different kind of meeting. Go to a coffee joint. Go somewhere else, obviously, that's confidential. And just begin to put it in your mind that we're going here to do something that we don't do every second of every day in our company. And you'll start preparing for it differently. You'll start thinking about it differently. And sometimes the dialogue actually will be different as well. Don't just do it in the conference room where you meet and talk about everything else, because it'll devolve into the same kind of meeting if you have with everybody else. Does that make sense?
It's kind of building a habit of kind of accountability and reporting, even if it's kind of informal.
Yeah, and by the way, just to add to that quickly, I will say that when you look at every really successful, I write, as Benjamin said, I write a lot of NASDAQ small cap content. I'm a mentor and teacher down the street here at the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center. And one thing that I was in NASDAQ last week speaking, doing some media stuff in their center, and some people were talking about, what have you seen of what are some characteristics, some of the most high-performing NASDAQ IPOs that you've seen over the last couple of years? And the ones that I've seen, they actually started acting like a public company. And I'm going to say some of them 3 quarters, some of them 4 quarters, where they actually began, for example, to internally go through the process of closing the books, issuing a press release, having a mock earnings call, so that by the time they actually were a public company, the only difference was they actually had a ticker symbol. There was literally almost no difference in the way the company was functioning. I've seen now 3 or 4 companies do that, and a lot of audit firms, kind of in there, if you go to EY, you go to Deloitte, PwC, you look at their IPO center, they all have the same PowerPoint presentations that say everybody should do that. The problem is virtually nobody ever does that, but the companies that I've seen do it, it's really pretty amazing that when you prepare, and it's a corollary to acting like you're beginning to have board meetings even before maybe they're going to be kind of full-fledged kind of board meetings.
So really, people get so excited about boards. We'll take 2 more questions. So one here.
So I have a 2-part question about it, and I think they're fast.
Make it quick.
All right. So first is how do you think about board count? So how many seats do you have on the board?
Yeah, board count, first question for those upstairs.
And then the second question is how do you think about advisory board versus, so who do you put on your advisory board versus who do you put on?
Sure. So board count, first of all, in really early stage companies, certainly before seed and Series A and before, it's a mistake in my experience. First of all, there is no right answer to this, right? So I'm obviously giving my opinion here based on companies that I've seen succeed. And you definitely want to keep the board size for those companies to kind of 5 and under is a good target. And so one thing I would not do is stack the board with multiple insiders if you can. I know that there's some reasons that there are multiple founders, they don't want to be on the board. You really want to have most of your board seats, if possible, be either investors or those independent directors as you grow and not have loads of insiders, primarily because just human nature, the more people you have, the harder it is for everybody to just correlate their schedules and actually logistically have board meetings. I have a company that's a Series C company. They have 11 people on their board. And they have one person who spends literally like 3 weeks just trying to organize board meetings. It's ridiculous. And then the board meetings are completely unwieldy. This is 11 people, right? Not to mention Uber, that's going to be 19 board members. I mean, a whole other conversation. So yeah, I mean, smaller is better. So kind of aim for 5 total is a good number. If it goes to 7, my rule of thumb is there needs to be a pretty good reason to start going more than that, right? And on the second question was advisory board. So here's, I have a little different view of advisory boards than others, and here's the reason. I very rarely, I think advisory boards are a great idea, but like a lot of things, it comes down to the usefulness of it. My experience is that founders have their hands full as they're growing, certainly beyond seed stage, Series A, learning the art of how to interface with a board, how to use a board, how to interact with a board, much less also with 5, 6, 7 advisory board members. So I think the idea of advisory boards makes a lot of sense. The problem is efficaciously managing a board, a formal board of directors, as well as advisory board, can in and of itself kind of become a full-time job, because the advisory boards that I've seen work, those CEOs will tell you, again, limited experience, caveat, is that I have to constantly keep those people energized, right, to keep them in the game, because otherwise they kind of drift off and start doing other stuff, because the people who you want to have as advisors are probably busy, smart people, right? They got other stuff going on. So unless you're constantly keeping those people, hey, here's some articles for you, or you have an EA that's helping you, hey, here's some articles for you, hey, we're going to have a call, it just kind of starts drifting away, and it just becomes name on a website, right? And so from a practical standpoint, it's I don't see very many people do it well. So I would start off with making sure that you really have a developed sense of how to interact with the proper board of directors, and make sure, because that's kind of part art, part science itself, and then think about some kind of advisors. And by the way, maybe you don't even call it an advisory board. If you put it on your website, maybe it's just kind of informal people, and you occasionally say, hey, you know what, Bill, Mary, can you meet me at Starbucks for 45 minutes? I guess I'm going to want to bounce off you, right? And then keep it less formalized. In my experience, a better chance of working. Does that make sense?
Okay, we'll take final question. I think somebody wants. Okay, 2. But we have to make it quick. Yes, you.
These examples Theranos and these are all in hindsight, right? So at the time, they were all great companies, everything was great, and then as the prices fell a little bit, the models were Theranos go too far with Walgreens, they tested on other people, right? There's always a line across. How do you understand, from the outside as an investor, public, private, how do you actually identify these things in a proactive way?
Okay, how do you identify future board failures proactively? A few examples. Number 1, really secretive CEOs, usually bad thing. Okay, so this is just right out of a playbook 101 for institutional investors, right? Really, really secretive CEOs, usually a bad thing. There are exceptions to that. But when a CEO is, for example, right? Did you read Bad Blood? There's a section in there which talks about the fact that the CEO of this company, Elizabeth Holmes, would literally walk people from the conference room to the bathroom and then back again to the conference room, right? The CEO did this to every visitor. Okay, that's the kind of thing where you start thinking to yourself, you know what, this is not someone zealously or appropriately protecting intellectual property. There's something going on, right? So the first thing, really secretive CEO is almost always kind of at least a red flag, and then you dig deeper. The second one I already mentioned, right? Really famous people on the board of early stage companies. As a former investor, I can't name one of those situations that worked out well in the small cap public ecosystem. It's not a lot different. It's not a lot different. Why? And I'm just going to give you a sinister read on this. A lot of CEOs bring famous people on the board to make up for business inadequacies or inadequacies of themselves that they know they're going to fight. Right? When you look back in retrospect, Elizabeth Holmes was really smart. Let me bring on Henry freaking Kissinger. People are going to say to themselves, oh my God. And by the way, it worked. Genius. Sometimes the bad guys are the biggest geniuses, right? So famous board members, also really bad. So you begin to look at some of these things in a public company context. CEOs that own tiny percentages of the company and boards that own no stock at all. No skin in the game. Also an issue. Right? Also an issue. So we can go on and on. I'm happy to talk about it offline. But those are a few things that institutional investors who are really closeted forensic observers learn to look at.
Final question?
How the hell did you get to a $4.5 billion valuation and only have 4 people on your board if you accept this?
I don't really know the answer to that question. And that's one of the reasons why I've commented a lot on it. And by the way, I'm not going to speak poorly I'm not even going to mention the name of the venture firm because it's, people make mistakes, right? And so by the way, I don't have any financial interest in those people, those of you who know who the VC was. So I'm not going to speak poorly of them, but just one of those things, right? It's kind of the nature of the zeitgeist of kind of everyone fear of missing out, all those terms that we all know, right? And the last thing I'll say is it's leverage, right? It's leverage, right? The same reason why you look at some of these other companies, you think, wow, really? So you have the whole, and the best example of that, by the way, is Snap. Okay? Snap had the either nerve or ingenuity to actually, for those of you who don't know, when they went public, to be able to go public and tell investors that not only can you never fire me, right? Not only can you never outvote me, but we're going to do an institutional raise, an IPO, and your shares get 0 votes. None. Absolutely unprecedented in the capital markets. And people ask me, Wall Street Journal asked me, Financial Times asked me, San Francisco Chronicle asked me, and I gave the same answer. I said, I don't think it's going to be that entertaining. The reason why they did it is because they could. Now, is it a good thing? No, it's not a good thing. And what's happened to them? Well, first, they got excluded from the major indices. That's not good for that company if you're a shareholder, right? And that I think is the high watermark, right, of companies, of that leverage. But the second thing that I've said publicly, and it hasn't been printed, but be careful when you go around Wall Street and poke people who manage billions and trillions of dollars in the face. Because if that company needs to raise money, which by the way, they will, they have $1.8 billion left, they've already run through a lot of it, that company's got to raise money again. That is not going to be a pretty day for that company. Right? So be careful what you wish for, but also, again, in my simplistic answer to me, my kind of childlike way of looking at the world, they did it because they could. It's leverage.
So on those words, please join me to thank Adam for putting the liveliest presentation. Calls that you could ever imagine, and now you know what a board is for. So we're going to take a 7 minutes break before the next and final session.